Welcome to another edition of Sounding Board. Nick, good to see you again.
Good evening.
So I had another question prepared for you.
Okay.
That we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but probably not for a while, or in a roundabout way.
All right.
So, I know you don't want this. if you were in power, okay, you're either the Prime Minister or whatever, the head of some mythical state.
Okay.
Well, let's just say it's Great Britain for the purpose of this thought experiment.
Yeah.
If you could do one thing, just one thing, and I'll allow it to be quite a big thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But
yeah.
you can't just say, "I would scrap the entire government and burn it to the ground and whatever." So you've got to pick something to do.
Okay.
If you could do one thing, what would you do? What would you pick that would have the biggest impact, have the biggest positive impact on people's lives?
Okay.
In Great Britain today. So imagine the state as it is now. So I can give you a couple of things that I've thought about. While you think, or do you?
No, I'm already ready.
You're straight there. Okay.
I'm already ready.
I mean, I imagine we have similar views on this.
Yes, and I'm not saying that this is perfectly thought through.
Well, I've given you 30 seconds.
There'll be pitfalls, and we'll talk about them, and we'll talk about whether or not this all can class as one thing. Because there's obviously a huge problem with the fact that the state is so large. There's such a bank of law.
Where do you start?
Exactly, where do you start? But I must admit, I'm gonna, for the purposes of this, I'm gonna go down a bit of an objectivist route. Okay, and this isn't, as you say, this isn't just about scrapping the government.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
This is the, and I don't know whether to just credit Yaron Brook or whether this is an Ayn Rand teaching, part of her philosophy. But this is in the same as in the States, they've got a separation of church and state. This is a separation of economics in the state, and so I love this idea that there should just be this rule, that is, the state can't do anything economic at all. And so then that does still include some things like defence and stuff like that, which arguably isn't economic. Although you could argue that it's all economic, but to say that the state can't get involved in anything to do with the economy would mean surely that all regulation would have to go. A large swathes of law wouldn't be able to spend any money, raise any money. I mean, is that saying that there's no state at all at that point? I mean,
we've had this discussion before. There is very much a state in an objectivist.
There is. It's small.
Utopia. It's small, but it's still there. So and taxes are raised voluntarily. I mean, this is very much Ayn Rand.
And Ayn Rand is all about protecting. It's a state that protects the rights of individuals.
That says that's what it does.
Yes.
I would argue that if they've got a monopoly on force, then they're not protecting all the rights of individuals. They're probably protecting some, or trying to.
Well, in this case, it would be protecting the economic rights of individuals if the economy is something the state can't have any hand in. But as you say, it would potentially be by force. Yes, exactly. But that's that. If you could cut out anything economic that the government does.
So that is bigger than I was anticipating. So the sorts of things that I was thinking about.
You assumed I was going to go, privatise the NHS or something like that, weren't you?
I mean, so that was one of them. That was, getting the state out of healthcare. Although I don't know whether that would do the biggest.
Land ownership would be an interesting one. Now that I think about it, now that the cogs are whirring.
Land ownership.
Yeah. Proper ownership. We're not talking. The state owns so much land and has rights over it. And our we talk about property rights, and property rights being a fundamental right.
So you're talking about having actual property rights over your land.
Yeah. And that the state wouldn't own any land either. Someone would have to own. So
that would that in effect. Is that by the back door getting rid of the state? Because if they have no jurisdiction and everything is private... It's
about jurisdiction, and it's about what would be, again, how would they be able to raise any money or spend it if they don't own anything?
Well, if they have no jurisdiction, then they don't exist. So that's a way of getting rid of the state by the back door. Because if they have no jurisdiction on my land and my road, for example, if I own a road, then the cops can't go on the road.
My plot of land is a free port.
Yes, and there are no, you can't raise taxes on my land
Yeah,
because it's my land.
yeah.
It's still too big.
But this is the point, isn't it? Is that what I'm looking at is those fundamentals.
Yeah.
It's the fact that when you look in our law, and it's not that I have a huge problem with the way that most of the common law we had has been developed. I think that's a pretty good process. But there are laws that says that the state can just HS2 style seize your land.
Yeah, compulsory purchase or eminent domain in America.
Exactly. In order to just say no, the state knows best. There's also curious laws around. You only actually own like the top of your land, even if you ignore all of that. Someone can tunnel down and then go sideways, and there's this. I want to use the term land grab, but it's an underground grab. Is happening right now in areas of London where the rich are going down and building their basements with their discos and their swimming pools. But the point is, it's the first one who goes down and across that gets it, and that to me seems so fundamentally bizarre that you don't own the three dimensions underneath.
How far do you go down? This would.
Do you own everything to the Earth's core? Straight down from your house.
Well, this would be something that would ideally precedent would be set via common law, and then something over time, something reasonable would be agreed, as opposed to some politician saying 3 feet or some arbitrary figure that.
But you see, this is why you do start thinking of and we've had this discussion before about how you would end the state straight away, how would you divvy up the land and all that kind of stuff. And the concept of homesteading and working the land. Could you apply something like that so that you could go out and away from your property underground because you are maintaining it and creating it?
It's all about use, isn't it? It's all about mixing land or property with your labour. That's when the two are mixed together. Then
so what if you go underneath someone else's property, and that means they then can't go down?
But if you're going around something, if you're going let's say you're going 100 yards away from someone's property, 100 yards under the ground, is that any different from going 100 yards away in another direction?
So it is all about keeping some kind of distance, so that as long as you went deep enough before you went across, then someone else still can go down. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know how it would work. I imagine there'd be some.
But the concept of fairness with this would have to come out in the common law kind of style, in a precedent-setting way, wouldn't it? About weighing up the rights of different individuals in different cases.
I mean, it might be that people say, you know what, you might get rich one day and you might be able to tunnel down, so therefore you just own everything to the centre of the earth.
If that was the case,
it might end up that way.
If that was the case, then
and you can sell that land.
That's my point. My point is that you may choose to sell that to next door because they want to tunnel sideways, and that's up to you. And then that would affect the value of your plot, and obviously the depth of it, because when you sell it on, if someone else wanted to dig down. They couldn't because you'd sold off the rights to that bit. That would be fine. But as long as to me, there would have to be those transactions. I think my gut reaction is you own everything straight down to the centre of the crust. But again, even then, what if we get to the future where we can harvest magma or whatever? Because you talking about the things that are underground. I mean, America, it must be stressed, has completely different rules in this regard, so that you can go down. What's yours is yours. You find oil, lucky you. You find a gold mine, that's yours. It's not the case over here. Not the case over here at all. Shale gas, all this kind of stuff. This house could be sat on a diamond mine, and it wouldn't be ours in the laws of this land. So, coming back to the original question, I think if we were to be able to get property rights sorted. I think that would make a big difference.
It would, and these are all good things. But it's still too much. I want you to have to think about this and actually pick something a bit smaller.
That's not very fair. Though you say pick something small.
Yeah, no, I want you to think about the kind of smaller things as opposed to saying the state abolishes, basically abolishes itself by getting, getting property rights back in order. So the things.
Go on then, you tell me yours then.
Well, I've got a couple of things. So you mentioned the NHS. That'll be a good one. I don't actually think I'll do that first. But getting the state out of healthcare would obviously improve people's lives.
And it would be a humongous saving.
Yes, of course. So the things I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Getting the state out of education. I mean, state schools are little Marxist factories, aren't they? I mean, they are just. Of course, state schools don't teach the dangers of the state, and you can't expect them to.
No.
But they shouldn't be in the business of teaching children and indoctrinating them in the first place. So that's one of the things I would think about doing, because in generations' time, if everyone was taught in a private school, then people will be more property rights focused and in 30 or 40 years' time. So that will be a good thing.
So you're playing the long game there with one change. Okay.
Yes. Another one is I'd abolish PAYE and then make everyone fill in a tax return, have to save up their tax, not spend it, and then at the end of the year realise just how much they're giving to the government. Yeah. And then that will make people less likely to to vote for Corbyn or anybody, to be honest.
Even if it wasn't saving up for a whole year. Even if it was just, and obviously there'd be a huge number of transactions if you had to do it every month, but it would shine a light. But
it could be that at the end of the month, when you get your salary, the first thing you have to do is write the biggest chunk to the as a check to the Treasury, and not to your mortgage company. Exactly. To the Treasury, which is everybody's biggest expense.
Well, as Dominic Frisby likes to say, it's the biggest thing you'll pay for over your entire life is the state. It dwarfs absolutely everything. Cars, houses, whatever else, food, water.
Well, I was trying to think about the amount of tax that I paid over the past since I've been contracting. I've been contracting since 2002, and I was never earning as much as I am now, but I paid over 50 grand of tax last year, and it's I could be. I'm by the end of my career, I'm going to be paid a couple of million probably.
I think
it's crazy.
But you see, I think to actually truly work out how much tax you
and that's
pay,
just income tax and national insurance and all that stuff.
Just income tax. Never mind the what was 17.5%, then 15%, then 20% of VAT on pretty much everything you've ever bought.
Plus all the good stuff is taxed. Petrol and booze and...
Yeah, absolutely.
Taxed up to the nines.
But you see, this is where it is a useful experiment to run, but straight away with tax, you've made a change there that would not
it's not
make
a huge
tax.
So it's not saying
illegal or anything.
Yeah. So it could be we'll have a flat tax of say 10% or something. Because I could potentially get away with that. That would be a huge change as well.
Yeah. This is interesting. My mind is going. I'm still not able to give you a definite, because there's so many things that I'd want to do, including...
you could get rid of all quangos, for example. That would be something that you could do.
Exactly. And while I'm in the civil service, I'm thinking about how you would smash the civil service in some way. I saw some stupid article, and it was about... The title was about Boris starting conscription again, but it was about working for public sector organisations for an amount of time in your career, and it was saying the same thing the other way. It was saying that these there's a problem with the lifetime Mandarin that has never worked in the private sector either, and it's like, okay, you're putting a solution to a problem that you're not looking at the underlying cause.
Yeah, you're fixing the symptom here.
Well, you're not fixing it.
Yeah, you're tinkering with the symptom and you're ignoring the cause.
It did. This was Polly Mackenzie, actually. Do you remember we saw her at the Big Tent Ideas Festival? She wanted to take everyone's money when they died.
Is she the 100% inheritance tax?
Exactly.
What an
exactly. So I enjoy laughing at some of her articles, because she is She's a proper magic formula person.
Yeah, but she doesn't think anything through.
No.
Not even for 10 minutes. It just
No.
blur, it just all comes out.
No, exactly. But I've said to people, obviously in not a conscriptive way, I've said to it, everyone should work for the public sector at some point in their career. I've said that to people in the past, having worked for a public sector organisation, in order to just see how bad it is. And that was the reason. My working for a local council, and I've worked for a housing association as well, which is very kind of quasi in the middle of the road, kind of, bit of everything, funding in this way. But certainly a council, that's government. It's local government, but it's still the state, and it's eye-opening. It's absolutely eye-opening, and it's not that you can't get stuff done. Obviously, we question whether that stuff should be done by a state at all, but there's so much waste, like an unbelievable amount of waste. Like, you can go into any organisation, any private company, and you can go, that's a waste of time. That person shouldn't be there, whatever. But just take that and times it by 1,000. Okay, when you go into any kind of public sector body, there are the lifers. There are the people that should have gone along. They're the unfirables, because their policies just don't allow them to do it. There's just the people who just constantly just push paper around and they're not doing anything real at all. Then there's the standard of whether it's customer service or whatever, where there's just no incentive to be better. And there's a few good people that really, really want to make a difference, but they can't because of the rest of it, and they quickly get disillusioned and they go. And hopefully those people get turned into the likes of us, where they go, that's the problem with the state. I mean, my opinions have been, in a no small part formed by working in the public sector. I don't think you've ever really... Have you ever had a contract in anything?
Not really. So I had a contract about 15 years ago for the post office.
Okay.
Which is as close...
And this is where we have to be honest, that large organisations... I mean, the post office is a special case again, isn't it? But a large organisation is largely propped up by the state, by law and regulation.
In certain sectors, so I've had banking contracts, so banking is the same. That's all. I mean, that's banking with the big banks. I mean, that's as close to a cartel.
Yes.
That's as close to the far right as we've got in this country, I would say.
Yes.
Like a properly controlled economy. Only these handful of people can do this one thing.
And literally, it was the triumvirate, wasn't it, or whatever? It was the Treasury, the Bank of England, and what was the IFS, the regulator, were supposedly these three organisations working together in order to make sure that the banking sector ran correctly. But yeah, what's that if not?
That's far right as far as I'm concerned. So I've had contracts in banks and they are awful. I mean, again, you get pockets where they're fine and they're efficient, but then I was in a really, really good team of contractors developing some software for this bank, and we would churn stuff out, and then it would take months before it went live.
Yeah,
literally months, and they would have these.
And what was the process? But this wasn't, because bear in mind you work in a. Well, okay. I certainly know that your background in tech is more on the quality side of things, rather than the development side. I'm saying the lines have been blurred a lot more now, but certainly in the times you were talking about there, you were providing the last bit of that process in terms of saying we're making sure this software is ready to go. It's not like you were just developing and someone else had to test it.
No. This was ready to go live, and this was just their bureaucracy and their admin to take it live. It was literally months.
Yeah.
And there were times when they said, if only we'd have had this a few months ago, we'd have got all this revenue in. Well, you did. So I've worked for energy companies. I've had them.
Where did you? You don't need to name drop, I suppose. I can't remember.
It was one of the biggest energy companies.
Really?
It may or may not have been. Yeah. So it was. They're pretty awful as well. And again, you get pockets where some people are efficient, but the rest of it are just.
But right, so banking heavily controlled and regulated. Energy, pretty much been privatised from the public sector. So you still got all the hangovers of that, and the fact that the part of that privatisation was about creating the regulators in the first place. I mean, seen as a model the world over of how to take things out of the state.
And this, so this is the example of going from the far, where are we on to the far left?
Yeah.
Working, we saw we were on the video from the far left straight to the far right. So I see these things as being the further out you go. It's not like I don't see it as being like a straight line. I see it as almost like a V shape, where it's actually closer to get from one to the other than it is to get back to the centre. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. So very, very tight
a
V.
Tight V.
Okay.
And if you're from the far left, where everything is nationalised, there's a short step from everything nationalised to everything being heavily regulated and there being
and private. Yes. 3
or 4 different owners, to going all the way back to the centre, which is perhaps light touch regulation and whatever.
Well, this is us our wishful thinking of what we think the centre ground should actually be, I suppose. But your point stands in that actually that swap of ownership and control over and the creation of a regulator in that process. You're right. That's what happened with it's what happened with railways. It's what happened with the energy companies. It's what happened with BT and the communications sector as well.
And that's a big problem I have with this kind of the left-right spectrum, because people automatically assume if you're moving away from the far left, then you're going to have to go through the centre at some point. No.
Yeah.
Things often go from one to the other.
Yeah.
And it'd be easier, vice versa as well. It'd be easier to nationalise the banks when there are 5 or 6 of them,
yes,
than if there are 1,000.
Yes, exactly.
So it's easy to go the other way as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And the same with railways. And if there was a completely private railway network, and there were hundreds of different railways and hundreds of different train line owners and what have you, it'd be far harder to nationalise that.
Totally.
Which is another reason why they kind of keep everything tightly controlled.
Yeah. So I mean, there are many flaws with this thought experiment of just what if we could do this, not least of which is that someone else can change the rules back again. So you can just go, well, the next person who gets in will do the opposite.
And that's the argument for abolishing it completely, isn't it?
Exactly.
If there isn't a state, then they can't change the rules, because whatever size the state is, it will get bigger, and they will just write their own rules.
I suppose this does it triggers some memories in me of being that whether you call it a centrist or magic formula
monkey.
Yeah. Before I really thought, but when I just wanted to shrink the size of the state, when that's what I wanted to do, when I just believed in a smaller state.
Well, we both did. We both did, sort of 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, where you do start thinking, and in fact, before thinking about democracy in the way that we do now as well, it was about tweaks to the system. It was maybe not quite Polly Mackenzie style tweaks, but it was about thinking about should term limits be introduced? Should certain
sunset clauses
should certain positions be appointed, or should they be approved in Senate style like in the US? The House of Lords. What should happen with the House of Lords? The fact that we've got this revising chamber that is made of entirely unelected people. In fact, apart from one. There's one person who is elected by the people in the House of Lords, if I'm right. There's some newish thing where, in fact, yes, I think if someone actually resigns from the House of Lords, then it's some crazy rule like
but
this.
They're not elected by us.
No, they're elected by the other people in the House of Lords.
So the people that there's no democracy there at all.
Well, but again, this is the problem with the term democracy, isn't it? Is that
it's like EU. It's like EU commissioners.
Yes, but you see, that's the reverse. Over here, we have an elected body, the House of Commons.
Oh yes, yeah.
And the Lords is the revising chamber, and it's basically the other way round. The Parliament in the EU, which has kind of been chosen by by voters, is the one that gets to tinker around a bit, but doesn't get to set the things in motion in the first place.
But and this is another one of those great contradictions. So you get so many people, particularly lefties, who are completely against the House of Lords. We should abolish the House of Lords. Yeah, people like Liberal Democrats and people and
Greens. Yeah.
Yeah, Greens. We should completely abolish the House of Lords. It's unelected. It's undemocratic, and we should get rid of it.
Yeah.
What about the EU commissioners? Oh, they're fine.
Yeah.
They're just dandy. and they're the more important ones.
But don't you know they've been appointed by someone who was elected? What I love, it's a classic Remainist argument for the EU, is of course there's democracy. Of course there's democracy. Do you not know that the Council of Ministers are the elected heads of state of all of the country, and then they vote on things? I mean, that's democracy. This is democracy squared, or
It's like a huge chain, and we're here.
Yeah. But again, it comes back to the arguments we were making last time about the appointees of those who've been elected. So Boris Johnson choosing someone like Dominic Cummings to work for him and to advise him in number 10, is that democratic? But therefore, is anyone who works for a politician democratic? No. But then again, you've got the civil service. There's this sense, we're told it's the greatest. It's the greatest civil service in the land, and all of this.
I mean, that's not a high bar.
No, but we're told that they're beyond reproach.
That's like saying syphilis is the greatest sexually transmitted disease. It's just
absolutely. But again, go back to education. We are told that the state is good. We are brought up to say it has to be there, and we're told that the civil service. I mean, if you're a civil servant, you are
public servants.
You are to be trusted. It is. You must have good in your heart. You must have only pure thoughts. But that's how it is. It's how it comes across, isn't it? But obviously these human beings.
Yeah, civil service, teachers, doctors and nurses. There's a whole swathe of
as you said, public servants.
Yeah,
it's the very language surrounding all of it.
But just going back to the point just now about how the EU works and how it's kind of democracy upon democracy upon democracy.
Yeah.
The people who favour that, if you try and ask them flat out, okay, so this is, I can see what you're doing here, and it's we elect a small portion of MEPs.
Yep.
And we also elect MPs for the government. The MEPs can do some. The chosen governments also select commissioners and what have you. That's a chain.
Yeah.
How big does this chain have to get before you are not happy with it?
Yes.
How many links in this chain? And
yeah.
They won't answer.
No,
they won't answer at all. They can't answer.
What if a commissioner appoints someone else to do something else?
Who appoints somebody else? Who appoints somebody else?
Yeah.
How big does it have to be before it ceases to be democracy?
Yeah.
And I'm saying it's not right now. I'm
No.
very clear.
No.
Not that I like democracy anyway, but I can at least set boundaries and say, look, okay, if the people decide something, that's democracy. Anything else, and it ceases to be.
I don't want to particularly invoke a stupid Remainist trope that we know so much more now. Okay. And we've had this discussion before where it's like, of course you do. Another day has passed. Of course I know more. I'm not an idiot. I am learning all the time.
And even if you haven't learnt any more, you've had more time to think about all the stuff you didn't know.
Exactly.
So just
even if no new facts have been presented
correct.
to you. Yeah. But I do know more about this last few years since the 2016 referendum. I think that it has been revealed a lot more of the inner workings of the EU, more since than in any kind of run up to it. And certainly, obviously we were aware of the gargantuan nature of this bureaucracy and the fact that there was, there's 5 presidents and all of this, and they go from Strasbourg to Brussels and the gravy train and the regulation and all that kind of stuff. But actually understanding the inner workings of how one of these presidents gets appointed or in quotes elected, chosen or whatever. The fact that we've now got, I remember when Tusk was chosen, appointed, whatever, Donald Tusk, and now you've got von der Leyen, is it German?
I know who you mean. I'm
Yeah.
not sure the pronunciation.
Do you remember it was what did he? Well, Nigel Farage called him a low-grade bank clerk. What was the guy before Tusk?
Oh, I know who you mean. I know who you mean.
I can't remember his name. That's how memorable this guy.
Yeah.
And he literally went, "Who are you?" And that's why it's quite funny that I can't remember his name now. But these are all basically failed politicians, aren't they? And they just kind of one day someone pushes them up and goes, "Right, everyone vote for this person. Call it democracy, and they'll be in charge."
Because there was Barroso as well, wasn't there? He was one of the presidents, wasn't he? And
he was the ECB, wasn't he? He was the European Central Bank.
Was he? Right.
Yeah.
Was it Rompuy or Van Rompuy or something?
Van Rompuy. That's it. Well done. Yeah, Herman Van Rompuy. Is that right?
Could be.
Yeah. Who are you? But understanding the methods that these people come to power, let alone their backstories. Juncker with his dodgy tax dealings in Luxembourg, and von der Leyen she's under investigation. I mean, this is all a way of like hushing up. It's just
if you look at what Juncker did, actually, you or I would agree with a lot of that. It's like why aren't you pushing for these sorts of reforms everywhere? Everywhere.
Well, Luxembourg is a tax haven.
Yeah, make everywhere a tax haven.
Yeah. But it just goes to show that they have these other motives, doesn't it? That they just want the control. They want the power, and they want to wield it. That's what it is. But yeah, I certainly have much more of an appreciation of those inner workings of things. Is it time? I've got another Scotch
Have you
back
snuck
here.
some more Scotch? Yeah, I think it is.
This time we've got the Auchentoshan American Oak.
Nice.
Because it is becoming a bit of a thing.
It is. So while you're can we move on?
Have you got more things?
Well, so there are a couple of things I thought I'd talk to you about today. Another one is I wanted you to have a think, and I haven't sprung this. Well, I have sprung this on you. I haven't talked to you about this before.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, now I'm going to have to separate people, broadly speaking,
the people
into the left and the right.
Okay. Well, that's one of our specialties.
Yeah, but this is people, and I know we have said before that people, you can't split them in between the left and the right.
No, totally. They don't know. Yeah,
because they don't really know the difference, and most people want bits of both. Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Your health. So I've been thinking about why the left seems to have the upper hand or people who broadly identify on the left have the upper hand over people who broadly identify on the right. And I've got a couple of things. I just wasn't sure if you had anything that you did.
I've got stuff I could talk about with that, but you start.
Okay, so the people who right wingers, people who broadly identify themselves as being on the right.
Yeah.
Virtually all of them have yielded somewhat to the left on a number of things, and have said that this has to be the left-wing solution. So I'm thinking specifically of education, the NHS,
roads.
Yeah, roads. You could argue, I mean, that's
no one argues that.
That's the lesser of them all. But things like the NHS and education, and none of them on the right are saying, actually, I would prefer a right-wing solution to this. Whereas the left, they obviously yield somewhat to the right as well in saying that, okay, yeah, we're regulating the banks, but they would absolutely, very easily say, yeah, but I'd nationalise them if I could. So they would. Yeah. Lots of left-wingers would have a complete left-wing solution if they got their way, and they would be quite open about saying, if I had my way, there wouldn't be regulation. We'd own everything.
Yes.
Nobody on the right is doing that. So because they're already yielding somewhat, saying, well, yes, the left-wing solution is correct for healthcare. The left-wing solution is okay for education. The left have got them already. So, well, if it's good enough for that, why is it not good enough for everything? And they're always on the back foot. So I think that's one of the reasons why the left is winning over the right.
I think...
Makes sense?
I think that does. I think that we should define more clearly what we mean by
don't say the left and the right.
No, what we mean by winning, because I think there's what looks like the dominant position on Twitter. There's what the big newspapers say. There's broadcast media. There's, do you get what I'm saying? This is different from what, I don't like using the term average Joe, but the people think.
I think if you had generally left wing ideas, you wouldn't be as afraid of speaking them as.
I think that's always been the case.
Yeah.
I think that's always been the case.
But right wingers have always yielded that little bit to the left.
Yes, I think so. But it's right. How's the best way of putting it? This is where there is a confusion between right wing and free market.
Yes.
I think that muddies the water with this, because actually the left have a purity of vision in that regard.
So there are shades of grey, and there's like a sliding scale between right and far, between the centre and the far right. So there's a sliding scale. You can have laissez-faire regulation. You can have light touch, and then you can get a little bit more, until you get to the banking regulation and far right fascism, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's very much you can kind of keep moving in different directions. Go, okay, we'll have a little bit less here, a little bit more.
Yeah.
With the left, basically it's like it's nationalised and that's it.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's a very simple argument.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's a very simple argument for people on the left to make.
But also because of that sliding scale, there's always going to be a mixed part of the economy that's part free, part regulated. And what the left are doing, quite cleverly, is saying, well, they're both on the right. Because you've got an element of freedom on there, therefore freedom is on the right as well.
And I think that's a very important point to make. I think that by making freedom a right wing idea, which it isn't, and it shouldn't be characterised as such, I think that's, again, that helps their purity. It's like everything but what we say, everything but state ownership is right wing. Everything else must be right wing. And so, in fact, it's why they want to try and adopt other stupid things like identity politics.
Yeah,
as well.
and that's why the Blairites are called right wingers and all sorts, isn't it?
Yeah.
People like Claire Fox, and you think, hang on a second.
Oh yeah, totally. I want to come back though to some other right wing ideas, because there are more of them. There are more of them than I think people think. And again, it's not just the fact that we've got a very clear definition of what we think right and left are, but the idea that we need to regulate the internet. Yeah, that's arguably the largest, most impactful right wing idea of now, isn't it?
New idea.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's going to happen. Yeah,
oh, yeah, for sure.
It's going to happen, and it's cropped up over the last few years, and now we've got to the point where social media companies are basically begging for that regulation. I've written about that.
Well, they've got to a certain size now. Therefore, let's just pull the drawbridge up so that nobody else can get to where I am.
Exactly. But it is a thoroughly right-wing idea. The creation of a regulator, or in the case, my understanding of where things are going at the moment, it's about giving Ofcom the powers over the big internet giants. Obviously, they've talked about specific taxes. Taxes on revenues of the big internet companies and things like that. Trying to work a way of getting money from companies that are massively successful while not charging their customers for it. And we talked about this before, about this change in model of where money is made from. You can serve a customer now without charging them, because you can make the money elsewhere in return for some personal data, some advertising, whatever, a personalised experience that other people can have access to in order to sell you products. And that's flummoxed governments, hasn't it? That's completely taken them unawares.
This is one of the reasons I'm hoping that technology will ultimately prove to be impossible for government to regulate, and because it will just be moving so quickly that it just can't keep up, and it will just have to be forced to shut down in time.
But it's no one defines this as these are right-wing solutions. No one would ever say it. I think that the left are far more comfortable saying left-wing than the right are of saying right-wing. They will be in favour of saying, sensible regulation or something like that. Whereas the left are all about the greater good, and but they have their slogans, the left, that resonates a lot easier. But there are the encroachment of regulation, the continuing creation of quangos and extra bureaucracy. That's happening all the time. There is no bonfire of red tape. The tax code getting as huge as it has under George Osborne or whatever. These are these right wing.
I mean, this would be a really good opportunity for the right wingers to actually throw this in the left wingers' faces and say, look, this is our solution. This is our solution. This is a right wing solution. Are you for internet regulation?
Yes.
And if not, are you saying you would nationalise the internet? And they'd be too scared to say that. In which case, you can have them and say, well, so if the right wing solution is good for the internet,
I agree.
Why is it not better for everything else?
I completely agree. I think if we put our political hats on.
Not that I want to give ideas to the right wingers.
They're not watching. But no, I'm with you. We've said this before. We said if it was me, I would do this. So many things. I would hang my hat on. In the Conservative Party, in government for X number of years. You would. Why wouldn't you point at the things that you deem successful and the things that the public are okay with? No one's shouting about regulation. No one really cares. We're the only ones who care about regulation. The term regulation is put out there as not even a necessary evil. It's seen as a good. We are regulating these big bad corporate companies, which again is this borrowing from the left wing, isn't it? But it's saying our prescription. It thoroughly undermines themselves. They're saying they're right. Companies are evil. But of course, their method of solving it is just crazy. Of course, you don't want to own the company. We just need some sensible regulation. Put me in charge, and I will regulate them for you. But they concede the argument in the first place. They have a different prescription for how to solve it. But they say the left is right in their assessment that
all companies are bad,
and they don't have an opposing view of it. They would never. Again, we've said this before, they will never extol the virtues of capitalism or of free markets or even of regulation. They don't actually say a company should be free to make goods and this, but mainly because they aren't free. Mainly because the regulation does hinder them, it does control them, it does stop them from unleashing their potential. Is that the kind of stuff you want to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, it was just I have the feeling that it's going to get worse, and that it's going to be harder and harder to have either a right wing or a liberal perspective on things, and
they can't help it when they're on the TV, when they're on the radio, when they're in any kind of interview. The right wingers can't help but give a sop to the left wing first before they answer. It's just built in, isn't it? It's like they're saying, "Don't shoot me, I'm a nice guy, really, but." And that's how they come across with every policy. It's not, as I say, but Boris is about the closest you're going to get to someone who will confidently stand up and say, of course I'm for the free market, and I'm for regulation, and I'm for a public NHS.
Yeah, it's the reason. So we went into this in the previous podcast where I said I kind of split people up into different categories, into the regulators. Who want to regulate stuff, and so they've got the right wingers who want to regulate, and then you've got the right wingers who want capitalism just so they can pay for the left wing stuff. And obviously, people are a mix of both of those things. But there's no one who just says capitalism is great, isn't it? Let's have more of it because it's great. These people don't exist, and I'm a little bit torn because obviously started this off by saying the right wingers are losing ground to the left wingers, and this is what they should do. Hoping that none of them are listening. But I'm not, is that a good thing? So is it good that the rights are struggling? And should we should we cheer that the right are struggling, or should we be unhappy because the left are winning? I mean, ideally they're both struggling, they both implode, and then that would be the end of that.
Well, I'll refer you to a couple of podcasts ago where we talked about whether the right was a threat or not. And I expressed more of a view than you that...
and this is in the same vein, that I don't really think they're much of a threat, and these are all the reasons why.
But the problem is that they're the ones who get in power. And so they arguably have much more... Again, they have much more direct control, even if they're being influenced by the policies of the left. It's a difficult one.
It's difficult because I think the people who have power within the Conservative Party are the centrists. I think the ones on the right aren't put in any meaningful positions.
But in our definition of aggregatism in that way, you mean? In very, very specifically, these are the sacred cows: education, health, police.
But this is what we said a couple of podcasts ago as well. In that it's the people who are really winning, because the right wingers are losing because they're just rubbish.
Yes.
The left wingers are losing because they're just mad, and it's the centrists that are winning.
Well, then we have feared. You said there'll be a left wing government, a proper left wing government. Someone will get elected.
Yeah.
In the next decade or so, because they'll just find someone who isn't mad. That was basically your point, wasn't it?
Yeah, so they'll find someone.
Certainly, they'll find someone who isn't terrorist sympathising and
So imagine a younger Jeremy Corbyn who wasn't an anti-Semite, wasn't as against Britain, was just an absolute socialist. Was a bit more patriotic.
But again, who are you talking about? That counts out even the articulate ones that exist.
Well, so
Ash Sarkar's never going to fit that mould.
No, of course not, and neither's Bastani and people. But even someone like Keir Starmer is more electable. I hate him.
Is he though?
Well, I think
he's just saying absolutely anything to get elected by the Labour members. Would you agree? He's going massively left wing.
He is, and he could get elected. He could be in 5 or 10 years. He could be the one that gets in.
I don't think so. I think here's some predictions. I don't think so because he's going left wing. I think he's getting into the same trap, which is you go that far left with these policies, and you're not going to be elected. I'm
not just quite as optimistic in that I can see people that are very left wing getting elected. I think lots of people didn't like Corbyn because of his anti-Semitism. Lots of people didn't like him because he was just on the side of everybody but Britain. And he wavered on Brexit. I think if you get rid of all those things and it's just some left winger, I can see them getting in.
So
imagine another 5 or 10 years of Conservative government. They'll just be crying out for anyone else, and if that other person is a rampant left winger, they'll just vote him in anyway.
So
might as well give it a go.
So you subscribe to the current Labour playbook that says it was Brexit, it was also the leadership, but all our policies were popular. That's what you subscribe to.
Yeah, I don't think they were far wrong there.
Whereas I subscribe more to the Boris form of centrism argument. I would love that to be the case. Well, I think that the majority showed that. I suppose the question is who's after Boris. The question is who's after Boris and whether or not there's a very real danger that trying to get rid of everyone's cars is going to have some kind of backlash. Yeah? There's a lot of absolute lunatic stuff. We talk about the loony left, okay? The loony centrism, the loony right that we've currently got, trying to it just doesn't work. You're going to get rid of people's cars, or you're going to turn them all electric, but you're not going to create the generating capacity to do it. And the only way you could do it is by building more fossil fuel energy plants or nuclear energy. Neither of which is going to happen.
So he's brought that forward, but that's still like 2045. I mean, it's a long way off. So again, think about this a different way. Okay, so Keir Starmer, you think, oh yeah, he's unelectable. Yeah, the Tories put up Chris Grayling, which you mentioned a couple of podcasts ago. Who's going to win out of those two?
Why would the Tories put up Chris Grayling?
For whatever reason, I don't know. They have a.
Oh, then they deserve everything they got.
Yeah, but that could happen. They could put up someone unelectable.
I seem to remember. I don't know whether we put this on a recording. I think I said that the Conservatives deserve. This was before the leadership election, the Conservative leadership election, before Boris was running all this, and I turned around to you and said that the Conservative Party deserved Johnny Mercer as their leader. They deserve someone like him. And I'm not saying he's not a nice guy, but in terms of someone that thinks they have substance when they don't really, who is just trying to make themselves look good, while spouting some basically virtue signalling most of the time.
I think he's electable, but I think there's nothing really about him.
That's what I'm getting at.
But I think he'd be more, if they put him up against someone like Starmer, he'd probably win.
Way better than Chris Grayling.
Yeah, but Grayling would be the classic example of, like another Ian Duncan Smith, someone like that who just, people are just not going.
That's unfair on Ian Duncan Smith to put him against Chris Grayling in that regard. But yeah, we're talking about people who lost elections.
Ian Duncan Smith isn't as inept or as incompetent as Chris Grayling. I'm not saying that, but he's very much unelectable.
I think this is the difference between competence and charisma, isn't it? And obviously Boris is seen to have both. And to rely on the Conservative Party electing someone electable, I mean that's something I don't like living with, but for all the same reasons. It was. We said the same thing about Theresa May. Yeah, she should have won hands down, because Jeremy Corbyn and his cronies were there on the other side. But it's clearly not that simple.
I mean, so I guess part of it is that the right are they're just not being clever. So they should.
No, I don't think they're very good politicians.
They should be hammering how bad socialism is. And look, these are the policies that Jeremy Corbyn has been in favour of his entire life. He hasn't changed his opinion. You yourself, the left, say he doesn't change his opinions. This is what he said in the 1980s about the Cold War. This is what he said about Russia. Yeah. This is what he said about
Germany. He's been wrong.
These are still his opinions. Yeah. This is what happened. This is what will happen under him. And they should just be going out and just shouting from the rooftops about how bad socialism and communism is. And this is what he wants.
So do you agree with me then that in purely political terms, since 2015...
That was Cameron winning, wasn't it?
Yes.
Against Miliband.
Yes.
Yeah.
So since 2015.
It seems such a long time ago.
No, it's one parliament, even though we've had, several.
I know, but it seems like forever. There's been so
much
has happened.
In 5 years. Let's just hark back to the moment where I could not stop laughing that Ed Balls had got kicked out. This was hilarious stuff. But that's the moment I'm saying that professionalism in politics, and this is a bold claim, this is generalisation beyond generalisation, but the professionalism in politics ended. And I'm saying that because Cameron...
Were they professional beforehand?
In relative terms to now, in relative terms to the last 5 years, obviously, 2.5 years ago, we were laughing at how you've got two unelectable parties. And they're squabbling, and they don't know what they're doing, and no one is good enough to do anything. And it's been this farce, the last 3+ years.
I mean, with the Tories, it ended with Thatcher, I would say.
Yes, but I think that Cameron gave us there was a sense of
the facade of professionalism.
He didn't get into scandal. He didn't get into silly scrapes. He wasn't. Think how many ministers he lost. Ian Duncan Smith was Work and Pension Secretary for years and years and years. Theresa May he had the most stable cabinet of decades. So I'm talking pure political terms. He had a successful government, even though he was in coalition with the Lib Dems. Blair was successful. You can't deny he was a political success. There was this bit, Brown, there's a blip of Brown at the end where that was a bit of a farce. But I'm saying that the moment that David Cameron decided to try and renegotiate with the EU as a farce and call a referendum and all that stuff, we're just on this downward trend.
He may have had a stable government, but I'm not sure there was. I think the only.
But we've not been there since. I'm saying compare now to even the times of we look back on 2010 to 2015 in comparison to the last 3 years as some kind of paragon of of good government.
I remember, like in those years, what the worst thing you had to worry about was Ed Miliband getting in. That was like the worst thing. It's like that, but they were such innocent times.
But also, they were competent. You might have hated them, but you looked at Cameron and Osborne and you thought they could win an election.
Yeah, I think the reason that you think that they're perhaps a bit more competent than I think they are, is because they couldn't really get anything done in those 5 years because of the Lib Dems. And as soon as they had their own way, they just screwed everything up almost instantaneously.
But they won the 2015 election.
Yeah, on the basis of not really doing anything for 5 years and getting a free pass because of the Lib Dems.
So you agree with me that from 2015 they mucked it up? I'm saying.
I think they weren't given the opportunity to muck it up because of the Lib Dems.
I think that's fair.
That's
fair. I think that's fair.
I think had they not got into coalition with the Lib Dems in 2010, they'd have screwed up a lot sooner. We wouldn't have had this 5 years of...
Yeah, but Blair invented this level of professionalism and engagement with the public and with the media. And I'm talking about not just one man here. I'm talking about the New Labour project.
Well, New Labour was one man for a while.
Yeah, but we had other people pulling the strings and and people behind the scenes. But we just there's none of that, and I don't even class this current government with a for want of a better term, a mandate and a landslide and a majority, as being professional. There's still bizarre things happening, but they just happen to be in power, and they could lose 70 MPs in scandal and still be able to govern.
Who was that guy who they recruited recently and they had to get rid of because of his...
One of the weirdos and misfits?
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Sabisky, was it?
Whatever. But again, this is the sort of thing that wouldn't have happened under a slightly more professional government. I mean, this wouldn't have happened under Thatcher.
But did it happen under Cameron? No. I'm sorry, I don't wish to defend him, but I'm saying that we do live in times with this stuff's more common.
His director of communications, Andy Coulson.
Oh, I'd forgotten about him.
So there was a bit of a scandal about him. So
was that the phone hacking? Was that why?
Yeah, he was seen to have been involved.
Okay, yeah, that's about it, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Pig's head.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
But this is the time we live in now. We live in a time now where it is du jour to have these stupid... The bar is so low now for political stories and scandals that you can have one a week. And
people just
Corbyn didn't help that, obviously.
People just turn off from them.
Completely.
They just think, oh, what is it? If it doesn't happen in a week, that's almost news.
So is there a way back from that? If government is professional and scandal-free for the next 5 years, then does that rebuild trust in the statist project?
Is that what you want, is my question.
No.
I'd love them falling apart and just imploding and just showing
what
the
most
public
people would
just
say
how
is,
useless they are.
But what most people would say is, and most people that would define themselves as libertarian in this country as well, let's be clear, but they just need to be seen to be more competent than the left because the left are much more dangerous. At least worse territory still. They're not actually willing to see the state project implode because they fear that is the route in for the Marxists. Now, Marx's theory is, isn't it? Marx's theory is that this what's his name? John McDonnell was on camera saying the financial
don't waste it.
For God's sake, don't waste it. They see chaos as their opportunity to get in, and as I say, I think that's a proper Marxist teaching, isn't it? Is that's the way you do it.
And this could be another test of a true libertarian, if there is such. I'm getting a bit no true Scotsman here on you, but this could be another test. And then there are lots of questions you can ask. There's would you be what do you have to say about people selling drugs in the school playgrounds, that kind of rubbish.
That's such a false.
I know, but you could. Should there be laws against it? Is the question, I think, as opposed to are you personally in favour of it? But anyway, so one of the questions you could ask is, would you be happy with seeing the right fail? And I think an actual libertarian would say, yeah, because the left will fail ultimately.
Likewise
as well.
with centrism. So it's centrist to the enemy.
Yeah,
because they're more credible.
If
they give a more credible view of what government should be. I don't want a credible view of what government should be.
If you want everything to fail and you don't care which order it's in, then I think you're a libertarian. I think if you want the state to be reduced but you want it to happen in your specific order, I think the argument is that you're not really.
Yeah, I think so. Or that you haven't quite made the leap. Yeah. But this is this interesting thing about, I mean, obviously the term, red pilling, blue pilling, or whatever. I think that again is seen as a kind of a right wing thing.
Yeah. So the red pilled is if you're red pilled, you're talked about as being, you've seen the error of the left and you're moving either to the right or to the free market. Whereas I would say red pilling is the government is rubbish. Welcome to voluntarism.
Yeah.
So very, very few people have actually taken the red pill. They've perhaps nibbled on it a little bit, and
they like the taste of it, but they're not ready to commit.
Yeah, they haven't swallowed it whole yet.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Well, should we end on that?
Yeah,
on that
so.
positive note of our vision of red pilling? You haven't got anything else you want to do?
No, we'll save that for another time.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks very much for listening to the Sounding Board podcast and for watching on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. We need to get our numbers up. Please share it with other people. Use your favourite podcast app. We're pretty much everywhere. And also, go onto YouTube and tick the little box, click the little, a little bell or something that says when we've uploaded a new video. Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening.